Okay, so on the last list we spoke about the worst movies of the year, and now let's move on to the best of. Of course, as I've mentioned, because of delays and movies getting moved to this year or maybe even next year, didn't get to see as many films, but there were still some really great ones in there. So let's talk about them now. Beginning with. So I really enjoy the Bad Boys movies. I'd say the first one more than the second one. You can call them guilty pleasures if you want. But I thought they were really, really fun. I like Will Smith and Martin Lawrence's chemistry. I think they did really well together, and I think that's what made Bad Boys for Life so interesting and so engaging. It's been years and years, something like 17 years since Bad Boys 2 and to Bad Boys for Life. And honestly, I think that really comes through in Lawrence and Smith's performances. It really feels like they're two guys who have been together and been through so much stuff, and they're coming towards the end of the road in terms of their jobs. And I thought the film was a lot more emotionally heavy than I expected. You can tell this was directed by somebody else. Bay didn't direct this film. You can tell that the action scenes look a lot different. The great action scenes, but again, there's a lot more emotional drama. It feels like the film has much more of an emotional center. It's got there's things in it like loyalty, family, revenge, things like that. Pretty heavy topics. But I think the movie really balances it out very well, along with the action and the jokes. The camaraderie between Smith and Lawrence, like I said, is really good. I just thought it was a really good film. It was Rachel's first Bad Boys film, and she really enjoyed it. And I'm glad she did, because, I think this is a very fitting way to end the trilogy. And I'm very glad it ended on the note that it did. So I think you should definitely check it out. I think if you're not a Bad Boys fan already, you might not like it, but I still think you should give it a shot because it is a really enjoyable film. So Judd Apatow is a filmmaker I really like. I'd say my favourite film of his would be, I think, The 40-Year-Old Virgin. But The King of Staten Island, his newest project, I thought was fantastic. Not as good as 40-Year-Old Virgin, but still a really great film. I think Pete Davidson makes a fantastic lead, and the film is somewhat autobiographical, because the idea in this film is he plays a guy whose father was a firefighter who was killed in the line of duty. In real life, Pete Davidson's dad actually was a firefighter, and he actually died during the 9/11 attacks. And it deals with, it's basically how he deals with that. He's obviously very anxiety ridden. He has a lot of issues, both physical and mental, and it's just kind of him trying to live his life, just interacting with his friends, with his family. His mother gets a new boyfriend played by Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. I think he's a great comedian and a great actor. This is his most serious role to date. And it's interesting, their dynamic, because he's a firefighter as well, which Davidson really holds against him, but then comes to, appreciate the camaraderie between firemen, and, how it's a job, it's a living. And it's very funny. There's a lot of really funny moments in it. But it's most of all a very heartfelt, very poignant film. I think that's where it works best. It can be quite serious. There's, like I say, there's a lot of quirky, funny moments, but mostly it's just telling the story of this guy who, needs to take responsibility, and he needs to take control of his life. And I very much enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Apatow does next, and what Pete Davidson does next as well. But for now, King of Staten Island, solid film. Really enjoyed it. So, And Then We Danced is basically Brokeback Mountain, but with dancers rather than ranch hands. It's a story of forbidden love. The lead character is a dancer, and he's in love with another male dancer, and about how it's where he is, the time, the place, how it's frowned upon, and how it affects his life. And I thought it was like Brokeback Mountain. I thought it was a very touching story. I thought it was told very well. It was very sensitively made. The performances are fantastic. The lead character is not actually an actor. He's a dancer by trade, but he was discovered on Instagram by the director. You wouldn't think it. You'd think he'd had a lot of experience, because he's fantastic in this film. He's very natural. That's the best, probably the best thing about the film. It all feels very natural. It doesn't feel like it's staged or acted out. It feels very natural. I love the dancing in the film. It's a very different kind of dancing to what I've seen before. And I love how the characters really express their emotions and their feelings through the medium of dance, through how they move. That's how they express themselves. I thought that was really well done. It's very entertaining. It's quite funny at times, but it's mostly a very poignant film. It got a lot of critical acclaim. I'm happy about that. Yeah, I would definitely watch it again, and I would highly recommend it. And Then We Danced is a fantastic movie, definitely worth checking out. So this film is, well, this documentary, it's about all of the hype that surrounds the film Showgirls from the mid-90s. I seen Showgirls something like maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Honestly, didn't really think much of it. I thought it was just kind of long, boring, kind of annoying, kind of stupid. But it's developed this massive fandom, this very ardent fandom. But at the same time, it's got a huge, like a huge number of detractors who criticize it for a variety of things, and you can understand why they do. But then all these supporters, they also have their reasons for liking it. And the documentary, looks at it from both sides. There's a lot of positive comments about the film, a lot of negative comments about the film. It goes into detail about director Paul Verhoeven's his backstory, not just his backstory, but his filmography, and how a lot of elements from his previous films, both his films from the Netherlands and his American films, how those elements made it into Showgirls. And it's almost like Showgirls is the culmination of his directing career. It's, yeah, like I said, it's a very in-depth look at the film. It's got a lot of reviews, it's got clips, it's got a lot of very in-depth analysis. It really shows you how subjective movies are, just how much somebody can look into one film. Someone can just dismiss a film, but some people can really, really look into it. And it's fascinating the things people can see in a movie like you wouldn't even have thought of, because people made all these comments and I thought, oh yeah, I never noticed that when I seen it. Because again, I think I just thought the film was kind of forgettable. It was just kind of just ridiculously over the top, took itself way too seriously, and I honestly thought it was kind of stupid. But it is fascinating to see what all these different people thought of it. So it's a great documentary. I definitely recommend it. If you've not seen Showgirls, it obviously won't make a lot of sense to you. So I'd say watch Showgirls first, then watch You Don't Know Me, and yeah, just make up your own mind about the film and the documentary about it. So I've had kind of a rocky relationship with Aaron Sorkin movies. I loved The Social Network. I thought that was fantastic. It really played to Sorkin's strengths. But Molly's Game and Steve Jobs, I hated. Well, I didn't hate them. I hated Steve Jobs, not so much Molly's Game. But my problem with those two films is they were just tedious talkathons. Characters just talk non-stop, especially Steve Jobs. That whole film, it was just everybody seemed to want to argue with Jobs about one thing or another. And the film had very little breathing space. It was just argue, 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 argue. The Trial of the Chicago 7 is a lot better. It's a lot more laid back. It's given a lot more space to breathe. The dialogue is still great. There's still a lot of classic Sorkinisms, and the fact the movie does kind of play fast and loose with historical fact. There's a lot, when I read about it afterwards, there's a lot of things it changed, but nothing too serious. I didn't think it kept the emphasis where it should be, on the trial and on the defendants, and also on the judge. The judge, I think he's called Julius Hoffman, played by Frank Langella. I love Frank Langella. I think he's a fantastic actor. He's like the most biased judge you can imagine. He's very much against the defendants, and it creates this fascinating power dynamic in court because everything is working against the defendants. They've got this angry judge who hates them, and they've got these high-level prosecutors. And the whole world is watching, and it's a very fractious time. It was set during the Vietnam War, but it's a very hopeful story as well. I love seeing how it showed the minutiae of how things work in court, about putting cases together and questioning witnesses and things like that. It put everything together very well. The performances are fantastic, especially Langella and Sacha Baron Cohen. He's great in this movie as well. It's a very entertaining movie. It shed light on an event that I really didn't know very much about at all, and it seems all the more relevant, especially in today's turbulent political climate. Yeah. So, yeah, I think if you have any interest in the case itself, any interest in, like I say, American history, then definitely check this film out. So Guy Ritchie's had an interesting film career, hasn't he? Back when I was in high school, I remember watching Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch I love them. Both great films. They're the kind of films I can just put on any time. I can quote any time. My friends and I often quote those films. But then he's done other weird films, like he directed Aladdin, which seemed like a weird choice, and King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, I think it's called. Didn't really like either of those films. King Arthur was just kind of dull. Aladdin was just weird, and I'm not big on the whole Disney live-action remake thing. The Gentleman, that's where he returns to safer ground. Maybe a bit too safe, because a lot of it feels like he's retreading old territory, but it's still a very entertaining film. It's got his trademark snappy dialogue. He goes back to doing it's a movie about gangsters and about criminal behaviour. That's really his niche, and that's really where he does his best work, I think. Matthew McConaughey's in it. He's great. Harry Golding as well. Who else was in it? Colin Farrell. Just a lot of great supporting players. A lot of great performances. A lot of laughs. Some very, very witty quips. It avoids the annoying ramble comedy I hate. Like it's a very, I'd say it's a very concise movie. The plot is actually pretty complicated, but the way it's broken down, the way it's paced, the way it's explained, it makes it easy to follow. Like there's never a point where you're just completely lost. Everything's quite well set out, easy to follow, and it's just fun. It's just a really enjoyable movie. Hugh Grant's great in it as well. That's him telling the stories, like the framing device. I just think it was really well put together. Most of all, it's just a really fun film that I had a great time watching. So I really like the Bill and Ted movies. They're very easy movies to like, especially the first one, Excellent Adventure. I'm not as big a fan of Bogus Journey. I did see it recently, and I could kind of soften my feelings for it, but I prefer the first film. So I was very excited that this film was announced, and I think everyone involved was excited as well. It's a very fun film. It's one of those movies you can tell everybody enjoyed making it. I like how Keanu Reeves and Alex Winters are older now. They're playing essentially the same characters, but in very different circumstances, and they both have this very weary look about them. They've been trying for ages to write this song to unite the world, and it's not worked. And you can tell they're kind of at breaking point. Like the other films, it's a kind of a zany time travel comedy. And I like how they kind of have fun with how nonsensical time travel can be, just going all over the place and time paradoxes and such. But it's just a really fun romp. I think that's like Rachel was saying. Films like this, they're the films that 2020 really needed. Just an unabashed fun movie, just an enjoyable film that you can just watch anytime and have a good laugh at. I especially liked. I'm not sure what her name is, but the actresses who play Bill and Ted's kids. One's played by Samara Weaving. I can't remember the other one's name, but the other one who plays she plays Keanu Reeves' daughter. She imitates Keanu so perfectly. It's uncanny. It's like Keanu Reeves is just in a teenager's body. It's brilliant. It was just a really enjoyable film. Like I say, I thought it was great. I wouldn't say it's as good as the first one. I think the first one's still my favourite, but it was a lot of fun. I'll definitely watch it again. Highly recommend it. If you like the series, you have to watch this one. It's just fantastic. So for a long time, I'd say most of 2020, Invisible Man was actually number one on my list, and then it got knocked off a few months ago. But this was a great film. I wouldn't call it necessarily a horror film. I'd say more psychological thriller. But it's got a very likable protagonist, Elizabeth Moss, who is used to playing characters under a lot of stress. She plays a very resourceful lead character. It's good to see that she wasn't just played as a typical idiot who's easy to catch or easy to kill. She's very resourceful. She knows what she's doing. She demonstrates a lot of very keen insight in a lot of situations. The baddie's pretty good. It's playing off a very kind of intimate fear. The idea that your partner can be out to kill you. It's a very interesting dynamic, and it's given like a 21st century twist, because this is a story from more than 100 years ago. It's given this 21st century twist. What I liked is the way it's directed and the way it's staged. There's a lot of very wide shots, so rather than the camera being right close, it'll be very far away. And what that means is there's a lot of situations where where Moss is being hunted by the killer, and they have these wide shots because it gives the impression the Invisible Man could be anywhere. That's the idea, and you're always made to think that they're right there on the edges of the frame. I thought that was really clever. A lot of very good artistic choices that really heighten the tension. The music does as well. It's got a great musical score. Just a very entertaining film. Very well made, very well acted. It was, like I say, it was my best film of the year, but it just got knocked off. But I would highly recommend Invisible Man. One of the best films of last year. So I seen the first Wonder Woman movie a couple of years ago. I think maybe the year after it came out, and I liked it. Honestly, I didn't think it was anything that special. For me, a lot of it just felt like just another superhero movie. What stood out was, I'd say, Gal Gadot's performance and a lot of the action scenes. Wonder Woman 1984, in my opinion, is one of those rare sequels that exceeds its predecessor. I thought this movie was fantastic. I feel like Diana is a lot better developed in this. I feel like the environment's a lot more interesting. The kind of hedonistic, yuppie, the hedonistic yuppie vibe of the 80s was explored very well. I thought Pedro Pascal was great, and Kirsten Wiig was fantastic as well. They both play villains who are super evil, but the film gives them very realistic motivations. Like Pedro Pascal, I think he took a lot of inspiration from like the American televangelists, which were really popular at the time. They would, you just give me money and I'll, just give me something and I'll promise you everything. I thought he really nailed that. He looked the part, he acted the part, and I thought he was great in the film. Kristen Wiig as well. She plays like a fairly kind of simple character who wants a lot more and eventually does get it, and it kind of goes to her head. I thought that was explored really well. I thought the action scenes were excellent. Patty Jenkins is a fantastic director. They're going to do another movie, and I'm really looking forward to that. So for me, 1984 was a huge improvement on the first one. It took everything that the first one did and just amplified it. It did everything. I think everything's so much better. It was, I'd say the best action movie I've seen this year, and consequently one of the best films that I've seen this year. If you were to ask me what my favourite movie of all time is, I would tell you I honestly have no idea. But if you ask me what the funniest film I'd ever seen was, I would say Borat. I seen it back in 2006 when it came out, and I've never heard a cinema audience laugh that much. And it's still to this day the pure funniest film I've ever seen. So when I heard they were making a sequel, they were doing a sequel in secret, I thought it was a joke, I thought it was a prank. Turns out, no, it actually happened. And I'm very glad it did. Much like Bill and Ted, this is a film 2020 really needed, just to perk everybody up. I loved this film. This was hilarious, absolutely hysterical. I was laughing. The two of us were laughing so much. So many of the jokes catch you off guard. It's the same brand of humour. I never understood why people say, oh, Borat's offensive, the things he says and does. The whole idea of Borat is he portrays, Sacha Baron Cohen portrays this character to expose the stupidity and prejudice of others. That's why it works. And in this situation, he's in America again, while the whole COVID thing was building up, and streets are more and more abandoned. It's just him. It's him on these weird adventures with his daughter, played by an actress called Maria Bakalova. She's fantastic. She's a really rare find. A lot of folk have been praising her. Lots of plaudits for her. She's fantastic. Yeah, she really holds her own in this movie. She's pretty much like the relationship between those two, because she plays his daughter. He keeps her in a cage, ha ha ha. But the bond between them is fantastic, and it gives the movie much more, I'd say, of an emotional core than the first film had. But they both go on these across these ridiculous adventures, and there's a lot of very nice moments between them as Borat becomes less of a less prejudiced and less discriminatory, and learns to appreciate his daughter a lot more. It's really good. Like I say, the jokes really hit you. A lot of them really come out of left field. You don't see a lot of the punchlines coming, and it's great just to take a look at the situation that the world is in and just to laugh at it. Just to make fun of how ridiculous and how all the different ways in which people are reacting to this. It's there's just so many different reactions to it. But for how enjoyable it was, how funny it was, how much it entertained me. Borat's subsequent movie film, great title, was definitely my favourite movie of 2020. So that's it. Those are my two lists. If you like, put down in the comments what your favourite films of the year were. I look forward to reading those. I know I said this last time that I wasn't going to do these lists, and I ended up doing them now. I'm definitely not going to do one next year. I'm going to be watching, I plan to watch a lot more other movies, and if if situations don't change again, I'm going to be going home in the summer. Not sure where I'm going to be after that, but yeah, I'm not going to be. I'll still be watching 2021 films. I mean, I'm looking forward to award season because it's all going to be different because of this pandemic. But yeah, I'm not going to be making any of these lists next year. We're just gonna watch whatever we feel like at the time. So, thank you for watching my lists, everybody, and I'll see you maybe in another video in the future. So, take care.